The resignation of Tulip Siddiq as a junior Treasury Minister could easily be dismissed as a minor political hiccup, an expendable figure bowing out over a scandal that didn't quite reach the boiling point. Yet, as Martin Kettle in The Guardian today astutely observes, this episode isn't just a pothole on Labour's road to credibility. It's a window into the deeper structure and cultural flaws within Sir Keir Starmer's government. What began as a story about one minister's poor judgment has spiralled into an unflattering examination of the machinery that Starmer has built. And Siddiq's fall from grace revolves around two damning issues: her ties to Sheikh Hasina, the deposed Prime Minister of Bangladesh and a notorious figure of corruption, and questions over properties that she used in London linked to Hasina's associates. And these revelations, magnified by her ministerial responsibility for tackling financial crime, have painted a picture of nepotism, carelessness, naivety. And that picture, unfortunately, reflects not just on Siddiq, but on the Labour government as a whole. And I think, frankly, on our Parliament. Our Parliament is full of amateurs, and that is probably the problem. So, on the one hand, being an amateur used to be a benefit, because it meant that the people in Parliament were one of us. But now, because Parliament is a sort of professional Parliament, people in Parliament rarely have a background in anything else. When they do, it's in something which is regrettable, and there are regrettable ties. So what we need to do is to either restore that genuine amateur tradition where people have an experience of real life and real business and then go into Parliament as a public duty, or we need to make sure that Parliament is thoroughly professional and thoroughly vetted. When challenged, of course, Siddiq did the right thing, eventually. She referred herself to the independent advisor on ministerial standards. Yet this act of self-referral is both her defence and her indictment. The fact that her political survival depended on her own initiative underscores the failures of the system that allowed her to reach that precarious position in the first place. The whistle should have been blown long before she got to that point. Labour campaigned in 2024 on a platform of restoring trust in politics, a necessary antidote after years of mismanagement and scandal. Now, the Labour Party would want to say this mismanagement and scandal was all Conservative, but it wasn't. It goes back through the coalition to the end of the Blair government. This is a mismanagement by the Labour Party, by the Lib Dems, by the Conservatives. It's a mismanagement by Westminster. As Westminster has become more obsessed with its own politics and less focused on being amateur and being representative of the people who elected the people into Parliament, so too it's become more open to corruption because it's a more closed society. Starmer, with his legal background, his reputation for probity, positioned himself as the ethical antidote to sleaze, yet, as Kettle highlights, this promise hasn't translated into rigorous action. It's the icing on an extremely unpleasant cake. And it can't cover that cake. The most glaring oversight lies in Labour's vetting processes. Siddiq's family ties to Sheikh Hasina, a figure well known for her autocracy and corruption, should have set off alarm bells, yet even more concerning, her alleged involvement in dubious property arrangements, which was public knowledge well before Labour formed its government. Why then was she appointed as a Treasury Minister tasked with combating financial crime? Is it that she has some sort of insight into financial crime? Is it that she knows corruption when she sees it? The answer points to complacency. By her, by Starmer, by the system, by Westminster. Complacency. And complacency is not an alternative to the benefits of being an amateur. The benefits of being an amateur is that you have a background in something else. These people don't have a background in anything. Starmer and his team appear to have believed their own rhetoric, that simply electing a Labour government was enough to restore integrity. But as Siddiq's resignation illustrates, As the Lord Ali story illustrates, trust cannot be assumed. It has to be built and rigorously maintained. Starmer's delayed update to the ministerial code is emblematic of Labour's failure to prioritise accountability. Only issued in November. This update came too late to address the Siddiq debacle. Worse, the code itself remains vague, hinged on subjective notions like whether a conflict of interest could reasonably be perceived. As Sir Laurie Magnus noted, Siddiq's actions didn't breach the code outright, but they fell far short of the high standards Labour claimed to champion, and that Labour should be championing, and that any government should champion. This vagueness reflects a broader cultural issue. Starmer's government, for all its talk of probity, has often been quick to dismiss allegations of impropriety, and Siddiq's property arrangements were brushed aside. Gifts to senior figures like Angela Rayner and Rachel Reeves downplayed, as also to Keir Starmer. Downplayed. Each incident taken individually may seem minor, but collectively they paint a troubling picture of a government too eager to circle the wagons, too reluctant to confront uncomfortable truths about corruption. Kettle rightly points out that the modern media environment exacerbates these issues. Today's relentless focus on political scandal amplifies every misstep, creating a climate in which even minor transgressions can become career-ending. Siddiq's sins may be more foolish than venal, but in an era of dwindling trust, even the appearance of impropriety is fatal. But the media's role is not an excuse. Starmer's government has failed to adapt to this reality. Instead of preemptively addressing potential scandals, Labour has repeatedly been caught off guard. And Siddiq's case is a symptom of the broader failure, a government ill-prepared for the scrutiny it claims to welcome. And what makes this saga so damning is that Siddiq isn't an isolated case. Her resignation exposes deeper flaws in Starmer's methodology. His government's commitment to integrity has proven superficial. Promises of a political clean-up have given way to business as usual. Starmer's tolerance of this filth, Siddiq's ties to Sheikh Hasina, her failure to proactively address reputational risk, and Labour's willingness to overlook red flags all reflect a pattern of complacency. As Kettle notes, Siddiq's resignation will likely fade into the background, her political career washed away by the tide of public indifference. But the lessons her case offers are too important to ignore. Labour must grapple with the issues at the heart of the system that her downfall has exposed, or risk squandering the trust it fought so hard to regain. For Starmer, Siddiq's resignation is an opportunity to correct course, to course correct. Strengthening the ministerial code, improving vetting processes, fostering a better culture of accountability must become urgent priorities. Anything less risks turning Siddiq's story from an unfortunate blip into a defining feature of Starmer's legacy. Siddiq's resignation may not be a political earthquake, but it's a seismic warning. And if Labour cannot rise to the standards it set for itself, it risks becoming indistinguishable from the party it replaced. Starmer's methodology has been exposed. And now the test begins. Can he adjust? Can he rework his course? Can he navigate to something like respectable political office? Because at the moment, he's heading into the choppy waters of corruption.